Hi everyone, welcome back to Live Darts. We're here at the MDA Modus event in Skegness and we've got Warriner Little. Alan, are you still enjoying the exhibition circuit?
Yeah, I found it pretty tough really because I've not done it for so long, and when you've been a player for so many years and then all of a sudden you have a massive break by, you're doing obviously PDPA work for myself and all the TV work with ITV and BBC, and then all of a sudden you're thrown back into the lion's den. It's frightening, it really is, because last night I really struggled, and tonight we've had a really good time with the crowd and managed to get a win as well.
Does the adrenaline still flow for that walk-on?
It does, yeah, because the crowds nowadays, not just in all the tournaments that we do, but the exhibitions as well, because they want to come along and see the players that have been on TV and ones that have been there beforehand, and they just want to come and be entertained and have a good time, and they want to get involved, and they really go for it. We get the MCs getting them sort of wound up and the undercards and all that kind of thing, and it is a really good experience.
Some real legends of the game here tonight as well. Plenty of PDC titles, world titles. Good company to keep. Yeah,
and I tell you, the banter in the back room before we start is so funny, because we're always winding each other up. It's all part and parcel of the game. We don't see each other that often, so when we do, we remind the player that the last time you played him when you beat him, or vice versa, and we just have a good laugh in the back, and it's all about entertainment when you go on the stage.
Going to flip you into pundit mode now.
Hey.
The World Cup's just finished. Scotland have finally joined the list of honour.
Yeah.
It would have been a travesty if we'd have looked back in 5-6 years if Gary Anderson and Peter Wright as a pair hadn't have won the World Cup.
Probably yes. I mean, two of the well-known players. They're so popular. They're such good players. They've won so many titles between them. Gary, 2 World Championships. And you wonder why, but when you look at the format, it's very, very hard early on. I know they've been to 2 finals, but early on, anybody can get beat, because the PDC players now are not used to playing pairs. We don't play pairs in anything apart from the World Cup. So when you're waiting 3 throws instead of 1, you kind of don't get your rhythm that you've always had, playing singles in all the events that we have. So it's always dodgy ground in the first couple of rounds, but good to see Scotland get that win eventually, because it's always been Holland and England, and two of the best players in the world for the last few years, so well done.
Plenty of emerging stories from the World Cup as well. Obviously Singapore, Paul Lim still doing a job, the Irish pair coming out the pack from nowhere, so the World Cup always tells a story as well.
Probably most people say the same thing, but I really enjoy the World Cup because of the format, because it's dangerous to the top professionals. But you do see a lot of players there that you may not have seen on many of the other tournaments. We saw the emergence of Diogo Portela a few years ago with Brazil, and a few teams you mentioned there with Paul Lim. He's been around. I mean, he was in my era, Paul. Such a lovely fella, and still playing darts at a very, very good level. Japan got to the semi-finals, and it's a joy to watch, because the joy on their faces when they win a game or a leg even. It's outstanding. I really enjoy it every year. It's one of the best tournaments in my calendar list.
We used to have a pairs tournament televised, and it's been a talking point that maybe some of the tournaments are all a little bit of the same and we see the same matches. Would it be nice to maybe see a complete pairs tournament at some point in the calendar? Maybe the World Series final. I'm just throwing ideas out, just to change one of the non-ranking events maybe to something a bit different.
Yeah, I suppose it's very difficult to fit them in, isn't it? We've got such a busy schedule, and the PDC's a marvellous job with, when you think of where we are now to where we were 10 years ago or 15 years ago, development tour, challenge tour, pro tour, all the TV events, the invitational events, and it's almost like trying to find a free weekend. But fans do want to see different things. That's why a lot of the main events are slightly different, and certainly a pairs thing wouldn't be a bad option for something maybe in the near future. I do not know, but it'll be certainly pretty intriguing, because it's not something a lot of the players do play in.
Rivalry in sport is always a topical subject as well, and obviously back in your day there was plenty of rivalries.
On the we're still doing it now in the back room.
I was going to say, that's the reason we got the exclusion.
But it's fun. That's how we grew up in the game. We're playing in the sort of old working men's clubs and tap room, and that's how we started. Players nowadays, I think, starting off in the development tour, they go to the big arenas. They're not used to going into these sort of venues that, all those sort of things used to happen in the olden days. But it's not a bad thing, but it's just the way we were in the day.
Plenty of modern rivalries developing now. Gowan Price is obviously very topical. The way he plays, very on the edge. And the Premier League, we saw some edgy moments from a lot of players. Is there a line in the sand now that's been drawn, or do we still think it's a little bit, we're not quite sure where the boundary is between gamesmanship and aggression on the oche?
Yeah, I think it's fair comment to say a lot of people have a different opinion. The important thing is to make sure that the DRA are in control of it and let everybody else know what that control is. PDC and ourselves are sort of involved in the process in terms of how things progress. But players do know where the line is, and I think the fans do as well. But there's a lot of opinion that when we see something on TV, because it's sometimes blown out of proportion, sometimes a fair comment, and you've just got to deal with it. That's what the DRA are there for. You deal with it, move on to the next event, and there's no big issue then.
You touched on knowing what's what. Obviously, there's two fines that have been handed out. I won't go into specifics, but they're very different ends of the spectrum.
Yeah.
Would it almost be better for the sport if there was a fine tier category where people know where certain things fall in, instead of a little bit of guesswork like it is at the moment?
I see where you're coming from, because a lot of people did mention that, and the DRA are looking into that, and they think we mentioned it, and so have the PDC, that it's not a bad idea. It's very difficult to do because everything's personal. It's everything. All players are different. It may be a different incident in a different event. There may be one. You just don't know. So that's why it's left to the DRA. They're a very good disciplinary board. The players don't like it because they're getting fined. But if you don't do anything wrong, you don't have a problem.
Are we in danger though, obviously, because from a real fan's point of view, we went through your era with Taylor and Manley and people like that to almost robots for a few years, and now it's gone back the other way. So is it almost a case of like fans themselves are like, what we have, and players don't really know where they stand either, whether they want robots or want characters?
I think that's another fair comment I said before, but players do need to know where they stand. I think that's an important thing to say, but I think generally, and I think everybody would agree, they know where the line is. They do know where the line is. I've been a player myself. When you're kind of touching over the line and giving somebody a bit more stick than maybe you should have done. It's all part and parcel of the game. It's just that, the word cheat, if you want to call it, you don't want to cross to that line in that category. Gerwyn Price, you mentioned, apart from Nicky Manick now, I won't mention that. But, he's a fantastic player. And to be fair, since this, he's come up with some really, really good darts in the last year or so. And he's probably one of the top 3 or 4 performers in the world, and rising in the rankings. Is an aggressive player, which is good to see. He's learning lessons as well, because he's relatively new to the game, let's be fair, besides being a sportsman before he played darts. So he kind of knows the background of sport, and he's learning day by day, but he is a fantastic player, and if he carries on like that and keeps his head firmly on the ground and concentrates on his darts, he'll do pretty well.
You mentioned the ranking there. It was next on my list, funny enough.
Was it?
Obviously, I know the players talk about this a lot on social media as well. The pros and cons of the 2-year one to a 1-year one. I bring this up because James Wade won 3 out of 4 Pro Tours, but didn't move in the rankings. Gary Anderson hasn't played competitively for 6 months properly, and actually went up in the rankings. Now, is that perhaps a flaw that needs looking at?
Well, we look at everything, let's be fair, We look at everything every single time, and we all have a different opinion when we're sat on the table with the PDC and the PDPA and anybody else that's involved, and we take everybody's opinion on board, and we try and do the best for the game. The game is the important thing. Now, if you've got a 2-year system and somebody doesn't move up or move down, it's because it's a 2-year system, not a day system. So you have to take it for the variety of what it's for. It's not over just because you've done well in one event or badly. It's over a 2-year period, or as you said, the Pro Tour, it's over 1 year. It's not over a weekend or one tournament. It's over the whole year. When you get to the end of the year, or when things come to the nitty-gritty, that's when things start moving. So if you look at it as a whole, over a year or two, with the 2-year system we have in the world rankings, you can't argue with it, because there's so many events now. You just kind of have to dig in deep and do as well as you can in most of them, and maybe have that really good run in one of the majors.
Exciting times coming up. Blackpool was on the horizon. I know it's probably
my
most fans'
my favourite event. Yeah.
Obviously, it's a special event and a special arena. What is it about the magic of the match play that brings out the best in all the players?
I think it's because it's one of the, like we got to snooker with Sheffield. You can't move it from there. You could get a different venue and get 5 times as many people in, but it wouldn't be the same. That's what Blackpool is to me, because we were there from the early days. The fans are always there in the droves, they turn up all the time, but I genuinely believe they're more darts fans in terms of if you get a ton, they clap. Whereas in your bigger events, it's whether you've hit a 180 or a big shot out or won the game. And it's, we call it the working man's Las Vegas. We're in Las Vegas anyway, but this is the working man's Las Vegas. and it's a fun town to be in, and it's more of a family atmosphere. You get a lot of children there. They stay for the week in the B&B down the road, and long may it continue, because that's been one of the driving forces of how and where we are today.
Obviously, when you look back at your career as well, World Grand Prix winner, was that the standout moment of your career? Or was there another bit that perhaps goes under the radar a little bit that you enjoy?
I think it probably was, personally, because it was just after my old fella passed away, and he used to turn up at everything, and he never saw it, so it was quite emotional on a personal level. But it was nice to get over that line, because I lost in the World Final, 2 World Match Play Finals, there's quite a few others, and it does get under your skin a little bit, because you want to be known as a legend, hopefully later on in your career. But you have to produce things, you have to win, don't you? People remember you for winning, not for being runner-up. But I've had a really good career. Unfortunately, Phil Taylor was around when we were there, the greatest ever player of all time. We could have all won many more things, myself, Rod, Dennis, all them players. But that's the way sport is. You've got to deal with what it is at the time. I've enjoyed everything. I'm still enjoying everything now, being involved in the other side of the game. And long may it continue. The game is in such a good place, and that's because of everybody.
Alan, thanks very much for taking time out to speak to us here at Love Darts. It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.